back to the StateData programs, and we talked about the second version, the first and second versions using parallel arrays. There's a big, not really a big problem, but there's a problem in that if you wanted to expand the data that's being stored by these by this program, you'd have to say you wanted to keep track of the state birds. You type in Massachusetts and you want to know what the state bird of Massachusetts is, or the state rock. They have all these ridiculous things that each state has. But say you want to keep track of that, you'd have to put you'd have to create a whole new array for that information. You'd have to create an array of state birds. You'd have to say equals new string of 50. You'd have to create the space for all that additional information that you want to search, and basically you'd have to create multiple arrays. And then the problem is, grab data from file you'd have to keep passing these arrays in. You have to add all those additional arrays, and then you'd have to define that those arrays have to be defined in the header as well, and it just gets kind of big really fast. Now, I'm going to show you a cool way to do this, and that is this third version. And look how much smaller that third version is. All right, but this time you'll have one array here, one array, and this is kind of interesting in that what we're storing isn't an array of strings. We're storing an array of what I call state data. Okay, this is our own class called StateData, and StateData is defined like so, right here. Okay, new public class StateData, and in there I bundle together all the information that has to do with a particular state. This makes much more logical sense in terms of programming, where the name, the capital, the area, the year, the order. If I wanted to add a state bird, I could throw that in there. These are called fields. What I've highlighted are called fields of the state data item. Now, public class state data. Now, when I use the word class, it doesn't define the data. It describes the data. Okay, it basically says I have this thing called state data. The information that's stored in that state data are these 5 fields, or additional ones if I wanted to add more information. Each of these fields are public, so I can access them. But going back to here, the nice thing is I have one array of state data, 50 of them. I took the same data file. I only have to pass it that one array. It's already cleaner as it is. And so the good thing about this technique is that if I wanted to add a state bird, a state bird doesn't really require me to change the main program, because the state bird is part of the state data class, and I won't have to make any major modification. You have to make some modifications because you have to read that state bird in. But let's go to grab data from file, show you what this is. Okay, only two parameters: the file name, the states, the array of state. The states is an array of state data, and now we pretty much process this file. The same thing. Okay, now here's what you're going to do to deal with the state data. You need to create an instance of state data. Now this guy here doesn't create the 50 instances. This is an array of 50 elements that can hold state data items. There's a difference there. Okay, so this is an array of 50 items. Each item can hold a state data object. Okay, a state data reference, I should say. All objects are references. So in order to create an item that can hold the state data for the 0 state, notice I'm doing this 50 times just like before, I create an instance of that state data, store it into the ith element, and this is how you access the field, dot notation. Okay, on this object, there's a field, and even the Eclipse helps you. Let me just show you here. Dot, okay, and it says, oh, here's a field, dot name. That particular field, I'm going to take that first line of the data file and dump it into that field. The second line of the data file, dump it into that field, capital. And then what I do is I read a double, an integer, and another integer, and fill it into those fields. Clear that line, do that 50 times. Now, in terms of processing by state order, let's take a look at state by name. Okay, so what I had to do here is, in order to use that library method, see, the library method doesn't understand from Adam what a state data is. The library method just had an array of strings, an array of and a key. That's all these libraries required. So what I needed to do was place the names, the state names, in a separate array. That's what I did. So create an array of 50 state names. Okay, grab the name from the individual object, put them into that array, and then the rest of this is the same. The rest of this is the same. So what happens is, if I search for Massachusetts, okay, and Massachusetts happens to be position 34. Okay, pretend that's position 34. Okay, what you could do now is say, well, states of 34, the capital field of states of 34 is the capital of whatever I typed in, Massachusetts. Okay, and if I typed in gibberish, then you didn't find that particular state. It's not found there. Same thing with the state order. Okay, I had to do this purely because I wanted to make use of the library search method. And the library search method, all it understands is an array and a key. It doesn't understand anything that has to do with state data. So you have to massage the data in order to use particular methods. Not a big deal. Create your array of state orders. Copy that information from the object, the order field, and once you got that, it works the same as what we had before. Okay, just to prove it, let's come over here and run it. Data file, let's see, state data.txt. Okay, I didn't output anything, I didn't get any errors, so let's see, what's the first state? Delaware is the first state. Good. I quit. I'm bored with that already. State name. Let's do Massachusetts. Okay, and Boston is the capital. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Now, there's one other version here. The version I want to talk about here looks pretty much the StateData 2. Okay, StateData 2 has this guy here, and I wanted to show you something that you're going to learn in Chapter 9, and that is, okay, this is all well and good. These are the fields. These are the fields of the state. There's not much difference between StateData and StateData 2. You still have the same fields, but I wanted to simplify our processing a little bit by saying, let's define what's called a constructor. So say we have these 5 fields, okay? What we can do is, once we create a state data object, we might as well pass that information to this constructor, and the constructor will take that information and fill in the fields of this object. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. Number 4, and this will be the end of this. Okay, here. Grab the data from a file. Okay, we grab that data, we put them into separate variables. See, notice there's no new state data or anything. I just read the data into variable. Okay, now what happens is, instead of saying new state data and then filling in the individual fields of the state data, you could do that all on one line. Okay, this right here, I have those 5 pieces of information. I pass it to this thing called a constructor. New state data 2 looks like a method, but this is a special method called a constructor. and that is what the new will automatically call the constructor to initialize this new object's fields with the data that you pass it. You do this all at once, one line, and this is a whole new object that gets assigned to this particular element, and the rest is the same, exactly the same. Okay, so we'll end the video here, and we're going to want to, basically I'm going to present the publisher's videos on objects, and let the publisher describe for you what their definition of an object is. I gave you a little of my leaning toward what an object is. Okay, we'll see you. Bye.